All right, let me get to Fox News Radio's John Decker, who's been taking a closer look at the Supreme Court of the United States because there's a big decision pending on that one. John, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, Mark. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. So the court is back in session. I assume that right now they're hearing cases, correct?
Oh, they are. There's two cases this week that are voting rights cases, and these are cases which many people think will give a direction as to where the court is headed on these particular issues as it relates to redistricting or gerrymandering districts. But I think that the big overall issue, Mark, going forward is who's going to fill that vacant seat on the U.S. Supreme Court. As you know, President Obama nominated Merrick Garland back in March to fill the vacancy left open by the death of Antonin Scalia. The Senate did not move on that nomination, and now President Trump, I should say, has the opportunity to fill that seat once he takes office in mid-January.
So how does that work, John? I mean, assuming that, let's say that President Trump nominates somebody and he gets through the confirmation process and gets sworn in as a Supreme Court justice in February or even March, would they immediately be able to vote on these cases where the arguments are being heard, for example, today, even if he's not on the court for 6 months?
No, they would not. They have to be there for oral arguments, hear the briefs, read the briefs, I should say, that have been filed on behalf of the parties. And so the cases that are being heard this week, for instance, are cases that ultimately whoever fills that seat will not likely be voting on.
Okay.
And so just to make that abundantly clear. These cases, though, we've seen instances where not every case, even though there are only 8 justices hearing cases, there's only been a handful of cases, Mark, in which they've actually deadlocked at 4-4. And if that happens, then the lower court ruling stands, but it doesn't have any value as far as precedent is concerned. So that's where things stand right now. Donald Trump has, if you may recall, during the campaign, put out a list of about 20 or so individuals that he said he would consider nominating for that vacancy on the U.S. Supreme Court. They're conservatives. They're the kind of people that have been vetted by the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. They'd be very pleased with any of those individuals being put forward as the replacement for Antonin Scalia. And what Donald Trump said in an interview last week with Fox News is that he is ready to make that name public very shortly after taking office on January the 20th.
Now, correct me, John. I thought I heard Donald Trump say that the name he was considering was on that list that he released. Did you understand him to say that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So
because I was kind of hopeful.
There's 20 names on that list. And it could be any of those 20 names. He says that he's narrowed the list down to about 4 individuals. And so these things take time in terms of vetting individuals. But now that he's president-elect, his team can go forward and do just that, vet those individuals that he is seriously considering for that 9th seat on the U.S. Supreme Court.
And I'm just speculating here, but I'm guessing that these will not be the people you'll see strolling through the lobby at Trump Plaza Tower to get on the elevator.
No, they're not.
No.
These are people that avoid the limelight, that in many cases are sitting judges on both state and federal benches, and they're individuals that are quite respected, even by liberals, in terms of the way that they approach the law. They may not view the way these individuals view the Constitution, but they have great respect for their approach to constitutional issues. Yeah,
one of them is Ray Grunder, who is a local judge here in the St. Louis area. He's been on the Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit. Yeah. Have you heard any names from your reporting who may be in the top 3 or 4 on that list?
Here's the thing to keep in mind. I haven't heard any specific names, so the answer to your question is no. But this is an opportunity, obviously, to keep the ideological balance that was in place when Antonin Scalia was still on the bench in place, meaning it would be a 5-4 conservative versus liberal balance on the U.S. Supreme Court. And you can imagine with this first decision that Donald Trump would have to name someone to the Supreme Court, he will likely be looking at somebody who's relatively young, someone that could outlast his presidency in terms of what they bring to the Supreme Court in ruling on many constitutional issues. So you're talking about somebody certainly less than 55 in terms of the people that Donald Trump may be considering for that vacancy on the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't know if the individual that you mentioned in St. Louis fits the bill there, but that's generally who he's looking for.
Yeah, I'm just guessing. I'd say he's in the ballpark of his 50s.
Okay.
Guessing. But
Yeah.
John Decker, listen, I appreciate your reporting on this, and we'll check in with you when things get a little closer to decision time.
And that sounds great, Mark, and save me 2 of those tickets for Guns N' Roses,
GNR,
right?
we'll get you on the list, huh?
All right, thanks a
All
lot.
right, John, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate that. John Decker from Fox News Radio. Had an interesting text, I should say, this week. We're going to try to get Andy Schlafly to join us on the phone. He's Phyllis Schlafly's son. Because if you look at this list of potential SCOTUS appointments, he's making the argument that only a small number of them are actually pro-life, and that a number of them have made decisions that might lead you to believe that they're pro-choice.